What is up? I got Coke Zero everywhere. That was stupid. Wanted to try one of those silly intros because that's what all the cool YouTubers are doing. Today we're gonna mix a country song, and this is off of Anderson Elswick's record. Actually, it's already mixed, but we're gonna look at my mix of it. This should be really, really fun. So, because we've done some of the production tips of this video, and a few days ago, I found out that this record, this EP that I did with Anderson Elswick, actually made it to the iTunes Top 100 country charts for just a day. It got to number 77. Here's a little screenshot of it that you can check out. But that was super cool because Anderson doesn't have a promoter. He's not on a label. This was totally just an independent record. And he just put it out there. Just put it out on DistroKid. Just hasn't even gotten to have a release party because of this whole coronavirus thing. But the record ended up doing pretty well. And it kind of surprised me. iTunes charts are based off of the number of sales in a 24-hour period. And so for him to release it on Friday and for it to be number 77 on the top 100 on iTunes just a day after, that was super exciting. And so I thought, let's dive in, let's look at some of this record. And I think I'm gonna make this a multi-part series because there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about in this mix. There's a lot of things that we could get into, and I think it would just be too fast and not detailed enough to just go through things one by one. And so maybe for the next couple of weeks, we'll put out one of these mixing videos per week. So let's jump in and let's just look at it. We heard a little bit of the track at the top of the video, but I'm just gonna go ahead and play kind of the second half of the verse building into the chorus and let you get just a little taste of the song.
But I couldn't stand to see my mama hurt, so I gave it all up. I think I found what a word. I need a Whitley song. Turn up a bottle and sing along. Let Tennessee courage ease my pain, 'cause I'm the only one left to blame. And everything is going wrong. I need a damn good dose of a Whitley song.
All right, I'm gonna stop it right there in the middle of that beautiful fiddle solo and the turnaround there. So cool. So many good players on this song. It was so fun to make this record. So let's jump in and look at the mix bus here. To start off with, I'm using the virtual mix rack, and nothing crazy here. Starting with the virtual mix bus, and I don't think that, oh, I did crank the drive up just a little bit, just a touch, and went to the Brit 4KG, and then probably what happened is it starts to default like that.
Whitley song.
I was pegging the needle, and I don't know that that adds a ton of saturation, but just by default, I always bring my input and output back just so that it's not, if that does add a little bit more saturation that's just subtle, I don't want that down the line. So typically I'm going like this.
Whitley song. Turn up a bottle and sing.
I wanted to just be kind of barely tagging the red. So, and then the very next thing in my mix bus is the FG Mu, and I'm using this. I always start with the glue setting, and then I dial the threshold in to taste. And so here we go with that. And I'm looking for just somewhere between 1 and 2.5, not quite 3 on the gain reduction.
Whitley song. Turn up a bottle and sing along. Let Tennessee courage ease my pain.
And then from there, I run it into the Slate virtual tape machine. Sometimes I will use the, let's see, there's this other one. Sometimes I'll use this. For this particular song, I just went with kind of my standard mix bus chain or whatever, but there is this plugin from SoftTube that I like a lot. I just want to show it to you. Just called Tape. And I've been using that more recently on my mix bus, but when I was mixing Anderson's record, I was still just using the old faithful, which I've been using this for years, like even before the Slate bundle thing was a thing, I was using this tape machine. So anyways, here we go. So here's this setting.
Whitley song. Turn up a bottle and
And again, I don't want it to be super heavy-handed with the saturation. I like going to 1/2-inch 2-track as my starting place. I like going to 15 inches per second because I'm trying to emulate what it would be like going to a mastering deck. If I put it on the individual channels, the settings that I'll be using is 30 inches per second and 2-inch 16-track, just because that would be more like an actual individual channel tape machine. But I don't even always do that. I don't stick the tape machine across every channel of my thing and go through all of that. If I feel like it needs it, I put it on there. If it doesn't, I don't. I don't try to emulate this like tape workflow to try to get this thing to happen or whatever. So here we go. So 1/2-inch 2-track, 15 inches per second, and then I'm again dialing the input and output with it linked to try to make sure that I'm not getting it too saturated, because with the tape machine you definitely can start to hear it if you get it up there too hot, and I'll show you that.
Whitley song. Turn up a bottle and sing along. Let Tennessee courage ease my pain. 'Cause I'm the only one left to blame. And everything is going wrong.
So there we go. We're hitting that, and then last but not least, of course, normally I'm running SonarWorks. I have that turned off because if I leave it on, I can even show you. If I leave it on, you'll end up hearing this. Here's my before and my after curves. The before is these two blue lines. So when I'm a little bit closer to the kitchen wall and it's not treated, there's a little tiny bit, 6 dB bass hump between 100 and 200 hertz. And so, yeah, so I wanted to make sure that you guys aren't hearing that, because that would be a major bummer. So let me just bypass this again. And we'll just do the old double bypass. Anyways, back to the mix bus. So now, one of the things that I hate is getting mix notes back from the client that say, man, everything sounds great, bro, but it's a little bit quiet when I listen to it next to, you know, such and such's record. I don't want that to happen. So when I'm sending mixes to client, FabFilter Pro L2, and then I just turn this off to send it to the mastering engineer. But typically, to send a mix to the client, I'm gonna leave this on, and I'm gonna go like this on my mix bus.
Whitley song. Turn up a bottle and sing along.
And that's just gonna help us to get a little bit closer to it being loud. They go and they play it in their truck, and they don't have to crank their volume up if they're listening to it in their truck. But for all intents and purposes, I'm not mixing with that thing pushed up, because if I start to really crank on something, I want to hear the volume come up, and I don't want it to be, you know, hitting that limiter and then me get a false sense of, you know, where that is loudness wise. So that's the mix bus. Very simple for this song. Just tried to keep it really simple. You know, I probably could have went through and, you know, maybe tried a few other things on this, but it was tracked really well and everything sounded really good as far as how it was played. And so I wanted to keep it pretty simple. So let's go through and look at some of the buses and some of the things that I'm doing there. So right here, I'll highlight them all. Right here are all of the buses that I used for this song, and how I have them routed is that all of the different instrument groups come in to the top here, and then they go out and feed this submaster, which is what we're just listening to, and then the master feeds outputs 1 and 2. So we have all the different effects that I'm using in this template. That this is something I got a long time ago from a course that I did 3 or 4 years ago. Jordan Valeriot did a hardcore mixing course, and then I've kept basically all the names in this mix template, but then changed it out for plugins that I wanted to use. Like, I really love Lustrous Plates. I like Repeater. I also like Echo Boy, so some of my mix templates will have that in there. And then I kept some things that I liked but changed, played around with presets. Like this Room, I think, was actually this Arverb preset is a Room preset that I've been using forever, and I think it was actually like a IR1 or whatever their impulse response reverb is. So all of my effects feed the effects bus. And I try to lay this out like I do live sounds too for a pretty big church in southeastern Kentucky. And I try to lay this out like how I think of my console. And so usually I have my channels on this side, and then I'll have my center section, and then I'll have my effects. This is how I use an Allen and Heath D Live at church. And so I have my console laid out like that. And that's exactly how I try to lay out my Pro Tools template, where all of my effects returns are over here. And we've got my center section, and then I've got all of my instruments. So we've got the drums on this side, and this is just, this is the Plug-in Alliance Townhouse compressor. Really great sounding version of the SSL. And this setting is something that I brought over with. I used to use the Waves SSL compressor on all of my drums buses, and then this is a setting that I brought over from that. And I think on the Waves SSL it's called Punch. So let's mute the crush, and we'll come over here and solo these guys up, and we'll just listen to this. So you can see it's kind of squishing the drums together. It's kind of gluing them together a little bit more. It's knocking that snare back a little bit, but then it's also bringing up, you end up getting a better sense of the room on the tail of the kick drum mic. And that's what I like, a more gentle bus compressor to do on kind of my main thing, my main drums, I guess, group or whatever. So, and then the next thing that I'll do is I'll always add a crush bus that has basically parallel compression. So this is, I use this preset here, drum punch bus compression, and then I'll play around with the sidechain filter, and I'll play around with the threshold, and essentially, and then the makeup gain. And essentially what I'm looking for is I want somewhere above 6 decibels of gain reduction, a lot more compressed. Usually I'm looking for somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10, and then I'm gonna try to get it to where it sounds even to me between the kick and the snare drum. I don't want the kick to make it dive too hard, but I also don't want the snare to be way, way louder than the kick drum. And so I just play around with it until it feels right to me. And so we'll mute this one, and we'll just listen to the punch bus, and I'm gonna bring that up so that we can hear more of what it is doing. Oh, and the punch bus too, I also do this where my drum mics, I go through here and let's see if I've done it on this one. Nope, it looks like I just went ahead and sent it to 0, and it's not pre-fader, so it's getting the mix from down here below. But the thing that I do is, with the crush bus, you can end up getting your cymbals to sound way too spitty and exciting. And so what I will do is just send the shells. So we've got that going here. So this is a ballad. We're barely getting 6 decibels of gain reduction. Maybe some of the really hard hits or the fills where there's toms. It might be going above that, but I guess I lied. So I said I'm usually looking for 8, but I guess I'm thinking of something that's a little bit more rockin', a little bit more heavy-handed. So what I'll do is, after I get the crush bus to feel right to me, I will bring that fader up underneath the main drum bus until it feels right to me. That's feeling pretty good. So now I want to check it in the song.
Whitley song, turn up a bottle and sing along.
Right off the bat, I feel like it's a little bit too heavy. I'm not listening with SonarWorks, so I could be wrong about this, and I don't exactly remember where it was a few minutes ago. I suppose I could have gone back and just reloaded the session, but I'm gonna pull it back a little bit and see how that feels.
Whitley song. Turn up a bottle and sing along. That Tennessee courage.
Yeah, that feels better to me. Basically what I'm looking for, especially in a tune like this, is I want the drums to have just a touch more presence. I want them to have just a touch more sustain so that they're not getting totally buried and stepped on, because to just turn up the main bus channel, it doesn't really set right in the mix with me. It needs to be a little bit more compressed, but having that parallel thing happening definitely helps it to not feel or sound like it's getting too squashed, the transient getting just totally, you know, obliterated, but at the same time, it adds the right length because of the compression. So there we go. So that is my buses. That's the mix bus. And I think that's probably a good place to stop for right now. I think we should go through this and do it in sections. I am gonna just go ahead and let you listen to the drums with nothing on there. I think that might be fun to do. So let's just solo the drums again. So these drums, let's see, let's go ahead and turn that stuff off. These are the drums that we recorded. I just wanna bypass them. There we go. I'll bypass the coach bus too. This is the drums that we recorded for this song, and they sound really good. So there's not, when we go, the drums will be the next episode, and there's not gonna be a ton of, you're gonna see, not a ton of stuff done to these drums. They're very small moves because everything was tracked with compression and with EQ and things on the way in, and also Goldman's just a really good player. So here's what the drums sound like without any of that stuff. That was my son. So, all right, next video, we will go through all of those drums individually, and I'll show you what I did to get them. So thanks for watching. This has been Mixing a Country Song, and thanks to Anderson for letting us use his tune for this demonstration. See you next one.